So, my first guest on the Untitled podcast show last week was a longtime broadcast partner of mine, Bill Colhane, and now joining me is a longtime broadcast colleague from the University of Texas, Craig Way. And Craig, I'm glad you got the memo that the quarantine was a good opportune time to grow a beard. I appreciate that.
I do have the quarantine beard going, Brant. Thanks for having me. Good to see you've got one going as well. I put the question to the athletics director for the University of Texas, Chris Del Conte, who's growing one, and he has vowed not to shave his until there are actual intercollegiate athletics going on, games. He said until we get games going, where it's volleyball, soccer, something, obviously football, as long as there's a game going on, if before there's a game, he's going to continue to grow his. I wore a beard for about 12 years from the time I was 19 till I was about 31, and I haven't had a regular one since, just like a summertime one. So it's taken some getting used to. It's a lot grayer than it was in the earlier days, but I've decided, this was as good a time as any to grow one. It'll eventually come off, but for now, I'll hold on.
I have made the promise to my wife I'll trim it. So
there you go.
I have it, but I'm not letting it get to be ZZ Top-like. So, well, Craig, I guess my first question to you is, how are you holding up? How's your family?
They're all good, Brent. Thank you for asking. And most are around the greater Austin area. My oldest son is a videographer and an editor for KXAN, and they've continued to do their newscast in their studio. Now they've had social distancing. It's interesting when you watch those newscasts for them, how their two news anchors, Robert Hadlock and Sidney Benter, are spread pretty far apart, as well as Jim Spencer and their weather center over to the right, and then Roger Wallace, their sports director and one of my broadcast partners on the Texas broadcast, kind of in another area as well. So they've had the social distancing, and my son Andy works for them as a videographer and an editor, but he goes into an area that's pretty much sealed off as well. So they've been able to do that, and he's been able to do that. I have a daughter up in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And she and her family have obviously been sequestered as well. I have a daughter down here in the greater Austin area who's a teacher at Vista Ridge High School, and she's been doing a lot of her lessons, as have teachers all across the country through Zoom and online. And then my youngest son is a sophomore at Midwestern State University of Wichita Falls, and of course he came home around spring break, so he's finishing up the semester online as well. So it's like everybody else, it's been adjustments, but we're all doing well.
So this has impacted everybody, worldwide really, and so what we've been able to do personally and professionally has changed so much. So I've been doing a lot more puzzles, playing more video games than normal, and professionally been trying to come up with creative ways to pump out content for Texas State. What about you on a personal and professional level? What are you doing to pass the time? What are you doing to continue covering Texas?
Very similar things, Brant. And in terms of the personal thing, I've been able to start to catch up. I'm really a voracious reader. I like reading books. I'm a big history buff, a big sports history buff, and I've had this stack of books, literally a stack sitting on my bedside table, trying to maneuver my way through them, and American history books. So I've been going through some of those. But I found that I've been staying pretty busy as well. I host a daily radio show on our flagship station in Austin on the Horn from 10 a.m. to noon, so I do that. Then the University of Texas has asked me to participate in a lot of things, just like what we're doing, Zoom chats with head coaches. We started off actually with Chris Del Conte, the athletic director with CDC. We did a Zoom chat with him, and I'm making my way through it, and through these past several weeks, doing one or two of these video chats a week with all of the head coaches of all of their varsity sports. So I've been doing all of that. Had one yesterday with Vic Schaefer, the new women's basketball head coach. So I've been doing those as well, and then I'm had a lot of walks with my dog, and also taking some drives as well. So it's been good. It's like so many others. It's been different and an adjustment thing, but we're all adjusting as best we can.
I feel like this news hit everybody in different ways, and there was that moment for everyone. I know that for me, we did a Sun Belt Conference tournament basketball game because campus sites were hosting the first few rounds, and we did a quarterfinal matchup on ESPN Plus. During the telecast, I got a notification from my producer that Rudy Gobert had tested positive for COVID-19. And then maybe 3 minutes later, he pops in my ear again to tell me the NBA has suspended its season. And that was my wake up moment, like, this is serious. Now, the Big 12 conference tournament was underway, about to start. So what was that moment for you when this all came to a head?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I was keeping up with what was going on with the Bobcats. You and I obviously stay in close contact, and I'm interested in what Coach Casper had been doing with the team this year, and had followed their progress as well. At the time that what you spoke of on that Wednesday evening, I was actually inside of the Sprint Center in Kansas City. The Big 12 tournament began on that Wednesday with the quote-unquote play-in games, the first-round games. You had the 7 seed versus the 10 seed and the 8 versus the 9. The first game was the 8 versus the 9. Iowa State, Oklahoma State was both games wound up being really, really exciting games. And Oklahoma State won the first one. And then the second game, TCU was the 7 seed and Kansas State was the 10 seed, and Kansas State won that game. During the course of those games, I was keeping up with what was going on with the Bobcats and following other conference activity. We had already been told that by Wednesday night, that the games starting on Thursday with the quarterfinals would be played in an empty arena. So the buzz for us was going to be about, how does that affect us as broadcasters? How do we zero in on what we're going to do it? The night before, on Tuesday night, the Big 12 play-by-play guys, all of us, I think all but Toby Rowell in Oklahoma, who was recovering from back surgery, so he was not in Kansas City. But the other 9 of us had all gathered for dinner. We do this every year. We get together. We meet for about an hour and share ideas and things like that. It's a great meeting. And then we all have dinner and a lot of fellowship together, and then have other folks join us, other members of our radio crews as well. So the main topic of conversation at that dinner was we'd already been told. Now, they had not yet said there would be no fans in the arena. All they had told us was the first step was they were taking all these precautions, and that among those things, with all the sanitizing that would be done, would be that we would not have any access to the locker rooms. So as broadcasters, there was not going to be any access to the locker rooms. Now, there was a great deal of concern about that from some of the broadcast crews who, when at halftime and then post-game, have one of their crew members actually go into the locker room normally and record interviews, and then they bring them back out courtside to do those. Now, for our Longhorn Radio Network broadcast, we've done all of our interviews courtside. Shaka Smart would come out. We'd have a student athlete come out and join us. So that wasn't a concern. However, all of us record pregame interviews with our head coaches. And I was going to have to record a pregame interview, which I normally would do on the road, in the locker room with Shaka. So I'd asked our media relations director for basketball, Scott McConnell, how do we go about this? He said, let me check and let me see. I think they might make an exception or two for just going in and doing that or whatever. So we were all talking about this over dinner on Tuesday night. How would we do our jobs as broadcasters dealing with that? So then it carries over into Wednesday. Then we find out during the day on Wednesday, and I was at the Longhorns workout on Wednesday. So they go through their practice inside of the Sprint Center, and we find out then that the decision has been made to play the games in an empty Sprint Center. And I say empty. At the time, what they had said was there would be about 125 quote-unquote fans for each team for only the game that they were in, maximum, to go into, so that their families who had traveled in could be there, and then probably a few other alumni or whatever that were going to be there. But it was going to be limited to 125 total fans for each of the 2 participating teams at the time. And when their game was over, they would clear out. The next 2 teams would come in, and it would put 125 fans behind their benches up here. That was going to be it. So we were all discussing, does it change how we do what we do? And I'd pretty much taken the opinion I wasn't going to alter anything in how I was going to call the game. And Texas, of course, was scheduled to play the first game Thursday morning against Texas Tech, an 11 a.m. tip-off. And so Wednesday night, we find out that they're going to do this in largely empty arenas. So Wednesday night, they went through they'd made this decision Wednesday afternoon, so they weren't going to turn away fans who already had tickets for the games on Wednesday. So they had, normally the first day isn't a sellout. The arena seats 18,000, but they normally have 14, 15,000, and it was about that. It was a good sized crowd, and they were noisy, and the bands were there, and the cheerleaders. And I found myself looking around the arena and saying to my producer on the road, my producer engineer David Garrett, and also to other folks who were with us who are sitting around, I said, I got this real melancholy kind of feeling, thinking none of this is going to be here tomorrow. There's not going to be bands. There's not going to be cheerleaders. It's going to be weird, but at least we'll have games. Well, so I thought. So we go through Wednesday night. Those two games are played. We come back Thursday morning. We get clearance as a participating radio network to come in to the building 2 hours before tip. All other media were only going to be admitted in 1 hour prior to tip. That was all it was going to be, just 1 hour. So we were in 2 hours. We had set up. Sure enough, I'd been given a special sticker on my credential and escorted back into the Texas locker room, specifically straight into the coaches area of the locker room where Shaka was, to do my pregame interview. I sit down with Shaka, and I said, "Hey, we're ready to go?" And he said, "Yeah." And then he just looked me square in the eye, and he said, "I don't think we're playing today." And I said, "Do you know something we don't know?" And he goes, "No, I haven't been told anything." He goes, "But I don't have a good feeling about this. And I know right now that Commissioner Bob Bowlesby is meeting with the athletic directors of the schools." So he said, "I got a feeling we're not going to play, but we'll go ahead and do the interview." So we recorded our pregame interview, and I go back out courtside. The teams come on the floor. They're going through warm-ups. Brant, we're 45 minutes to tip off. We're 15 minutes to air on the network. We were going to take air at 11 a.m. It was 11:30 tip off. I said 11. It was 11 a.m. air time. 11:30 tip off. It was at 10:45, and I was doing a live drop in with our morning show guys, and I was talking about the measures that were going to be in place, watching the teams warm up, and I see our operations director for basketball, Cody Hatt, walk up, and he walks on the floor and looks me straight in the eye across the floor, and he goes, and I said, "Is it not happening?" He went, "Wow, it's done." So, and I see the teams walking off the floor, and so I said on the air at that time at 10:45, "Fellas, I've just gotten the high sign. This game is not happening. They are not going to play this basketball game." And I saw the media scrambling. They were just walking into the building, so they come running up to listen to what's going on. And it said, "It's not going to happen." So, and then of course, all the dominoes started falling. And as you know, Brant, things were happening so fast. They were changing, not only hourly, they were changing in less than an hour. We were hearing more and more updates and more updates. So it was a very surreal, bizarre scene. And within 2 hours after that, maybe 2.5 hours, I was on a plane headed back home with the basketball team. They packed up and had the charter plane ready, and we were airborne, and we were headed back to Austin. So it was a strange, say 48 hours there in Kansas City.